the alien fleet jammed every human signal, but humans don't need signals. The Vessek Dominion fleet dropped out of slip space above the human colony of Meridian Station, with the confidence of a species that had never lost a first contact engagement. 11 warships, crescent-hulled, and the color of wet slate, unfolded into formation around the small research outpost like a fist closing around a coin. Fleet Commander Traus Olveren watched the tactical display bloom with green threat markers. All of them clustered on a single, unremarkable human station with barely 300 souls aboard. "Jam their communications," he ordered. "Every frequency. I don't want so much as a distress beacon reaching their homeworld before we've finished our assessment." His communications officer, a narrow-faced Vessek named Idrissa Kell, tapped through the sequence in seconds. Static bloomed across every human channel: radio, laser relay, quantum entanglement beacons, all of it drowned in manufactured noise. "Done, Commander. They are blind and deaf to the rest of their kind." Olveren allowed himself a small satisfied breath. In the Dominion's 11 prior first contact operations, communication denial had reduced target populations to panic within the hour. Species that could not call for help typically stopped believing help was coming. "Deploy the boarding shuttles, let's see how the humans behave when no one's listening." 3 days earlier. None of this had begun with warships. It had begun with a signal. Dr. Amara Osei, station xenolinguist and reluctant senior officer of Meridian Station in her supervisor's absence, had been the one to catch it. A faint, structured pulse bleeding through the station's deep space array at 0340 hours, station time, not noise, not a pulsar, a pattern, deliberate and cold, repeating every 41 seconds. "That's not natural," she'd said to the empty control room, before waking the rest of the skeleton crew. By dawn, they had confirmed it. An alien fleet, still 4 light hours out, decelerating on a vector that led directly to them. Meridian Station was not a military installation. It was a mining and research post, staffed by geologists, a handful of engineers, 2 doctors, and a security detachment of exactly 6 Marines under Staff Sergeant Malachi Voss, a man who'd spent more of his career doing equipment inventory than combat. The station itself was a patchwork of pressurized modules, bolted onto the flank of a nickel-iron asteroid. Its corridors narrow enough that 2 people had to turn sideways to pass each other, its air recyclers old enough to groan audibly every time the temperature shifted. It was not a place anyone imagined making a stand. It was a place people came to finish a 5-year contract, bank the hazard pay, and go home to somewhere warmer. None of that history mattered now. What mattered was the shape on the sensor display, growing larger by the hour, and the 63 seconds of silence that followed Amara's explanation before anyone in the briefing room spoke again. "We could run," said the station's chief engineer, a stocky woman named Priya Chandrasekhar, during the emergency briefing. "The Halcyon freighters still docked. We could get maybe half the station off before they arrive, and leave 150 people behind," Voss said flatly. "No, then what?" Priya demanded. "We've got 6 Marines and small arms against a fleet that just dropped out of slip space like it owns the sector." Amara had been quiet through most of the argument, running the alien pulse pattern through every translation model the station's aging AI could manage. When she finally spoke, the room went silent. "They're not here to talk," she said. "The pattern isn't a greeting, it's a claim beacon. I've cross-referenced it against the linguistic fragments in the old Kessler probe archive. Humanity's only prior brush with non-human signal traffic, 40 years ago. This is a formal notice of territorial acquisition. They think this system already belongs to them, so they're invading," Priya said. "They're repossessing," Amara corrected grimly. "In their own minds, this isn't a war, it's paperwork." Voss exhaled slowly. "Then we're not fighting a war either, we're making sure the paperwork is wrong." No one understood what he meant yet. He would explain it only once. And only after the jamming began. The Vessek boarding shuttles touched down on Meridian's outer landing pad exactly as Olveren's tactical readouts predicted. No resistance, no chatter, no signs of coordinated defense. His away team, 4 armored Vessek troopers and communications officer Kell, advanced through the station's entry corridor, expecting frightened, disorganized primates. Instead, they found Staff Sergeant Voss, standing alone in the docking bay, unarmed, hands open at his sides. "Where are the rest of your people?" Kel asked through the translator collar around her throat, her voice flattened by the device into toneless mechanical cadence. "Working," Voss said. "We don't stop just because you showed up." Kel's antennae twitched, an involuntary Vessek tell for confusion. In 11 prior contacts, target populations had frozen, fled, or attempted futile resistance once communications went dark. None had simply continued their shift. She studied him a moment longer, searching for the tremor of concealed fear that every prior species had betrayed in this exact scenario. A held breath, a flicker of the eyes, toward an exit, something. Voss offered none of it. He simply waited, the way a man waits for a bus he already knows is coming. "Your station is isolated," she said, testing him. "No signal reaches beyond this system. Your homeworld does not know you are here, no one is coming." Voss almost smiled. "You keep saying that like it's supposed to scare us, should it not? Lady, we've had jammed comms before. Solar storms do it twice a year out here. You know what we do when the radios go down?" He gestured at the corridor behind him, where the low hum of the station's fabrication bay was audible, steady and unbothered. "We keep working. Humans don't run on signals, we run on plans." Kel didn't understand the distinction, not yet. Aboard the flagship, Olveren received Kel's report with mounting irritation. The humans hadn't panicked. They hadn't attempted to flee. Diagnostic sweeps of the station showed no outgoing transmissions, no encrypted burst attempts, no evidence of a call for help, and yet something about the readings bothered him. Power draw across the station had increased since the fleet's arrival, not decreased. Fabrication bays were running hot, cargo elevators were cycling on schedules too precise to be panic. "What are they building?" he muttered. He ordered a second sweep, then a third, and each returned the same maddening picture. No weapons signatures, no shield capacitors charging, nothing that matched any threat profile in the Dominion's considerable archive of first contact engagements. Just steady, patient industry, humming along beneath his fleet's shadow as though 11 warships were an inconvenience to be worked around rather than a fate to be feared. It was the patience that unsettled him most. Fear he understood, fear was predictable. It made species reckless, or it made them beg. This was the calm of someone who had already made their decision and was simply waiting for the rest of the universe to catch up. He would not get an answer for another 6 hours, by which point it would already be too late to matter. What Olveren didn't know. What no Vessek intelligence briefing had ever recorded, because no Vessek had ever asked the right question, was that human colonies this far from Earth did not depend on real-time communication to function. They couldn't afford to. Signal lag to the nearest relay was measured in days. Meridian Station, like every frontier outpost humanity had built, operated on something older and less elegant than instantaneous contact. It operated on dead man protocols, 96 hours. That was the maximum silence window Meridian Station was permitted, before its automated systems assumed the worst and executed a standing continuity plan, drafted, rehearsed, and quietly dreaded by every colonist who signed on to live this far from home. The plan didn't require a signal to reach Earth. It required the absence of one. Sergeant Voss had triggered it the moment the alien pulse was confirmed. 3 days before the fleet arrived, 3 days before the jamming even began. Not a distress call, a silence. A structured, deliberate cessation of Meridian's routine, automated status pings to the relay network, timed exactly to the second. Somewhere, 4 light days away, a relay station would notice the missing pings and, per protocol, escalate. The Vessek hadn't jammed a warning. They'd jammed nothing at all. The warning had already left 3 days before their fleet ever translated into the system. "Commander." Kel's voice cracked through the flagship bridge, unusually tight. "Long-range sensors are picking up slip space distortion. Multiple signatures. Inbound." Olveren turned to the display and for the first time since taking command, felt something colder than professional irritation settle into his chest. 18 new contacts resolved out of the churn of collapsing space tissue. Far larger than his own crescent-hulled cruisers, blunt and gray and utterly without the aesthetic flourishes the Dominion favored. Human ships, and at the formation's heart a vessel so large the sensor array initially misclassified it as a moon. Designation, Olveren snapped. "Unknown class," Kel said. But Commander, the humans on the station knew. They knew this was coming. Their engineer logs, the ones we just intercepted. They weren't building weapons. They were building a targeting relay. For that, the Dreadnought's outline sharpened on the display. Kilometers of matte hull, weapons batteries beyond counting, running lights that blinked on in slow, deliberate sequence. Not a greeting, Amara Osei would later explain to a shaken Kel, but a warning in a dialect of light humanity had used for over a century before radio ever existed at sea. We see you, we are not afraid, stand down. Olvaren's hand hovered over the general engagement order and did not move. 11 ships against 18 was already a losing trade. 11 ships against 18, and a dreadnought whose main battery alone could outmatch his flagship's entire arsenal was not a battle, it was an epitaph. Hail them, he said finally, voice rough. Formally. Kel complied, and a moment later Amara Osei's face appeared on the Vessek bridge display, calm, tired, unarmed by choice, standing in the same docking bay where Voss had first met the boarding party. You jammed our signals, she said without preamble. Did you think that was the only way we could talk to each other? I do not understand, Olvaren admitted, and hated himself faintly for the honesty in it. You silenced us, Amara said, so we let our silence speak instead. Every colony we build has a heartbeat, a ping, sent home every few hours, so Earth always knows we're alive. You didn't jam a warning, Commander, you created one. The moment you cut us off, you told the entire Sol Defense Network exactly where to look. Olvaren stared at the dreadnought looming on his tactical display, and understood, at last, the shape of the mistake he'd made. He had studied humanity's weapons, their ships, their small and scattered colonies, and had never once thought to study their silence. What do you want? He asked. The same thing you wanted 3 days ago, Amara said. To talk. Except this time, you're going to listen. The negotiations that followed lasted 11 hours and ended not in surrender, but in something the Vessek Dominion had never before extended to a species they'd once intended to conquer. A treaty of equals, signed under the watchful, patient guns of a dreadnought that never fired a single shot. There were no grand speeches. No formal apologies exchanged across a polished table. Just two exhausted commanders, one human and one Vessek, working line by line through terms neither side had expected to need when the day began. Territorial recognition, an open channel for future contact, and a standing agreement that no fleet would again approach a human colony in silence. Olvaren would remember, for the rest of his long career, standing on Meridian's docking bay floor, as his fleet withdrew to neutral space, asking Sergeant Voss one final question. Your dreadnought, he said. How long has it existed? Voss glanced up at the ship's shadow, still visible through the bay's viewport, patient and silent and utterly unhurried. Longer than you'd like, he said. We just don't talk about it much. Didn't think we'd need to. Kel, standing beside her commander, finally understood what had unsettled her from the very first hour. The humans hadn't been quiet because they were afraid. They'd been quiet because they didn't need noise to be dangerous. It was a lesson the Dominion would carry into every future briefing on the species, printed at the top of the file in bold, cautionary script. Assume nothing about us, a species whose silence you cannot read. The Vessek fleet broke orbit at dusk, station time, running lights dimmed in what Amara Osei would later confirm was a formal gesture of respect. Meridian Station's automated pings resumed their steady, unremarkable rhythm a moment later, the same quiet heartbeat that had summoned a dreadnought across 4 light days of silence, and would, if anyone ever threatened this small, stubborn outpost again, do exactly the same thing without a single word being spoken.